Plastic Theorists. We're back to our old format by popular demand. Plus, I like doing these kinds of videos more anyway. So no more of my ugly face for these reviews. However, for battle reports, for some of the other videos, you're gonna have to see my face. I'm sorry, I'll pay for your therapy. But for these, we are going back to the older / better format. So anyway, welcome to this episode. It's episode, I don't know, because I can't read or count. Did you guys know that Dark Eldar got a second detachment in the balanced data slate? In case you didn't know that, they did. And it's literally not published anywhere except on the app when you go to their army. Now you'll see 2 detachments, which is great because the first one is literally just worthless in all possible ways. So today, we're going to be taking a tactical look at the Dark Eldar, Drukhari, the Space Pirates, whatever you want to call them. We're going to look at their good units, take a look at their points, see what they do, try to call out any of those key combos that the index has to offer, and all that awesome theory building stuff. So if you like that kind of content, which I know you do, raid the like button, subscribe, smash the bell icon, which is Nurgle's bell icon. It's always Nurgle's bell icon. Leave a comment. Check out our other videos as well. We have all kinds of content and we got more coming. So who cares about the Dark Eldar anyway, right? I mean, they're stupid, right? No, they're actually really cool. Dark Eldar are super duper cool. Their motif is cool. Their look is cool. Their vehicles are cool. Their guns are cool. Their whole thing is cool. The only thing that's not cool about them is living in the warp. What's up with that? But let's go over their index today. And we're going to talk about mainly the second detachment that they have. All right, let's not waste any more time here. Drukhari. This is what they do. They got power from pain. Basically, so you start with 3 pain tokens when the game starts. And then each time an enemy unit is destroyed, you gain a pain token. And each time an enemy unit fails a battle shock test, you gain a pain token. You get empowered through pain. You can either use them in the movement phase or the charge phase to re-roll your advance or charge rolls, or you can get empowered in the shooting or fight phase. And each time a model gets empowered in the shooting or fight phase, you can re-roll the hit roll if it's a melee attack. And this is a new addition per the balanced data slate. You actually get +1 armor penetration on your melee weapons as well. That actually is very significant because now you're re-rolling all your hits and your +1 AP. So now all your AP, call it 1 weapons, are now AP 2. Reroll all hits. It gets better though. We'll get to that in just a second, but that's what you get for your army rule. This is not going to change in 10th edition, at least not drastically. They added a little tidbit to the combat there. They might add some other stuff at some point, maybe when they get a codex. Who knows? But right now, it's actually not a bad army rule. I really don't think it's that bad because units are dying all the time. And so you're going to be getting pain tokens pretty regularly if you can force your opponent to fail battle shock tests, or if they just happen to fail them by accident, you can get some pain tokens that way. Getting +1, or getting rerolls to hit, not +1, but getting rerolls to hit in the shooting phase specifically, I guess either phase, but in the shooting phase is really nice because that means all of your Dark Lances on all your Ravagers and stuff can effectively be old school twin linked where they're rerolling their hit roll. That's really good. We'll get to more of that in a sec. But this is your army rule. It's very strong actually. Being able to re-roll advance and charge rolls, I mean that's really nice for the charge roll specifically. You could then empower that same unit in the fight phase and give it re-roll hits and +1 AP. Awesome. So at a glance, not a bad army rule. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's pretty good though. The only thing about this that kind of sucks is generating these tokens, these pain tokens. If you're up against an army, like Imperial Knights or something, Chaos Knights, they have like 11 models. So you're getting a total of like 14 pain tokens that whole game, unless they fail a battle shock test, which Chaos Knights are trying to get you to fail battle shock tests, so yeah. So there is a little bit of weirdness there. It's not like when your units die, you get a pain token, so you can kind of control how many you have or how many you can get access to. This is completely dependent on what your opponent's playing. If they're playing like 5 big knights, oh, you can't play 5 big knights. If they're playing 4 big knights, you get 4 pain tokens. So just keep that in mind. It's good, but it's not amazing because it is limited by what your opponent can actually bring to the table. So we've gone over that. We like it, it's fine. Let's go over the detachment. And this one is going to be the Skyspinter Assault. Do not worry about Real Space Raiders. I'll just tell you what it does right now. It's awful, don't read it. There you go, now you know. Skyspinter Assault though, this is really good. So this is Reign of Cruelty. Each time a Drukhari unit from your army disembarks from a transport until the end of the turn, that unit's ranged weapons have the Ignores cover ability and that unit's melee weapons have the lance ability. So if they charge, so now let's combine the two, right? You're empowered in the charge phase, or well, the fight phase more specifically. You're rerolling your hits, you're +1 AP, and because you got out of a transport and you charged, you now have +1 to wound because you have lance. This is huge. This takes so many of the units from being bad to being good. This takes, so like Incubi, for example, they become +1 to wound. They're wounding everything that's toughness 7 or less on 4s. Anything that's higher than that, they're wounding on 5s. You rock to an Imperial Knight with these guys, you're wounding them on 5s now. They're not going to kill the Imperial Knight, but it's to illustrate the point that +1 to wound is a very strong ability. And also getting ignores cover on your shooting weapons when you disembark from that transport. Okay, so now you've got 10 Kabalite Warriors. Kabalite, they come out of the transport and they shoot a bunch of stuff. They're rerolling their hits. There might be an Archon attached to them, so they might be rerolling 1s to wound. If you're empowering them, then they're rerolling all wounds and all hits, and then they ignore cover. So you can see how this starts to stack up pretty quickly, and how you can really start getting some damage through with this. So that's what you get. Lance and ignores cover as long as you disembark from a transport. Now, we do have some StrateGEMS here, and they're all good. Just about all of them. The first one is Vicious Bites for 1 CP. This is a strategic ploy. It's in your fight phase. Just after a Drukhari transport from your army has selected its target, you select the transport. After the transport is fought, select an enemy unit that was the target of 1 or more attacks and roll a d6 for each model that's embarked within the transport, adding 1 to the result if that embarked unit is Wracks. For each 5+, the enemy unit suffers a mortal wound to a maximum of 6. So if you have 10 dudes chilling in a transport, then you're probably going to get about 3 mortal wounds on something, which is pretty interesting. Wracks themselves I don't like, but if you have Wracks in there, it's on a 4-up. So if you had 10 Wracks in a Raider, then you would get about 5 mortal wounds on average, so which is pretty good for 1 CP. 5 mortal wounds for 1 CP. The thing about this that's a little bit strange is that the transport has to have been like in combat and fought, but a lot of your transports are going to be up close anyway. Obviously, that's how the game's played. You got to put shit in places where it's guaranteed to die, which means in the center of the table. So if you're charging in with a transport, or if your transport's getting charged, you can potentially do a bunch of mortal wounds back to these guys. This is pretty cool. So a lot of these StrateGEMS you're going to see in a second, they're all based around transports. At least I think most of them are. So this is going to catch people off guard. They're going to charge into your Raider, maybe try to just tie it up. You know, they're like, okay, I'm going to charge my Rhino into your Raider. Your Raider has to then choose if it's going to fall back. You know, it can't shoot if it does that. It kind of limits the options that your opponent has. And then you just go, okay, I fought with my strength 4 attacks. Okay, here's 10 dice to 4-up mortal wound you, or 5-up mortal wound you, which is most likely going to be the case. Which is great. You could end up doing a lot more damage to the opponent than they did to you. You could end up taking a unit below half strength, causing them to become battle shocked. This is just one of those things, it's kind of like grenades. It's pretty good actually to just do a bunch of mortal wounds to something on a whim. The only stipulation here is that you've got to be in combat. Then you also have Wraith-like Retreat. This is 1 CP, also a strategic ploy. This happens at the end of the fight phase. You guys can probably guess what this does if you're just listening to this video and not actually watching it. But you target a Drukhari infantry unit from your army that has fought. This is what it does. Your unit can make a normal or fallback move, but unless it's a witch unit, it must end that move wholly within 3 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of a friendly transport and must embark within that friendly transport at the end of that move. Dude, this is crazy. It's 1 CP. Your unit is in combat. It fights, and then it falls back into the transport, and your opponent has to deal with this? That's insane. Let's use Incubi. So you have a bunch of Incubi, 10 Incubi. They come in, they kill something, because that's what they're designed to do, especially with their +1 AP and now +1 to wound. 10 Incubi come in, dead thing. Cool. I'm now gonna move my Incubi, I think they move 7 inches, so you can have your transport like 10 inches away from them. You move them 7 inches towards the transport, they get back inside the transport. And that was in the same turn that you charged. This doesn't say that you're not allowed to do this. There's no restriction on this because one of their other StrateGEMS, which we'll get to in just a second, is to allow them to disembark from a transport that moved and charge. So as long as you have 2 CP, you can move up a Raider, get out, charge with Incubi, kill something, then go Wraith-like retreat, move 7 inches, get within 3 inches of the raider, get back in the raider. Do you guys understand how crazy that is? That's insanely good. So this is just, I'm not sure how to handle that. Like, that's just really weird. It's like the unit just comes out, it's like a lash, it just comes out of nowhere and just smashes people and then it disappears. So this is super duper good. It's gonna have a lot of play. It really plays into the way the Dark Eldar want to play, where they have a lot of transports and they want to be hopping in and out of their transports and relying on the transports to do a lot of the heavy lifting. This is so good with that. Even if the transport doesn't move. So, you know, turn 1, you stage, you get up behind the one of the walls that's close to the center, your opponent does the same thing, and then your next turn, you get out with your Incubi, and you charge and you kill something, and then you use the stratagem to pop back inside the tank, which is behind a wall still, and forces your opponent to have to move around to get lines of sight on the tank, because now they realize, oh shit, I have to deal with this. This is a problem. This is a really, really good stratagem. Yeah. All right, so Skyborn Annihilation. This is a battle tactics. It's 1 CP. It's in your shooting phase. You target a Drukhari unit from your army that has disembarked from a transport and has not been selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by the models in that unit have sustained hits 1 or sustained hits 2 if they're Kabalite Warriors. That's awesome. Sustained hits 2 on any unit is great. Remember that this unit is going to be empowered, so it's going to be re-rolling its hits. So you're going to end up getting a lot of sustained, and if you're sustained, it's 2. So 4 of the guys have a special weapon, I think, right? You got like a Shredder, a Dark Lance, a Blaster, and then like the Sergeant has a Blast Pistol or something like that. So you got 6 other dudes with like 2 shots apiece. So like 12 shots, 2 6s. That's 4 additional hits. You re-roll everything. So you re-roll 10 dice. You might get another, let's just call it 2 more 6s. So you're gonna hit with 6 out of the 10, and then you're gonna put another 8 dice back into the pool. I wish that you could do it on, like, if you get sustained hits 2 on, like, what are those things called? The ones that fly around, the Scourges. Sustained hits 2 on Scourges with all those Dark Lancers or whatever other gun you want to give them, that could be hilarious. Because if you give them the +1, you know, the power from pain, they're re-rolling everything. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. You can give them sustained hits 1, but not sustained hits 2. Overall, getting sustained hits when you really need that damage boost, and if you think, you know, I've got enough strength, whatever weapons here where I should be able to roll at least a 6 or 2, this could be good to have. I mean, imagine rolling a Dark Lance, rolling a 6, and then getting 2 additional hits with that. That's pretty good. Or same thing on any of the other weapons that you have, the special weapons with a high strength and low AP or high AP. Getting a sustained hits 2 on any of them, that really starts boosting the damage output. Sustained hits 2 is completely busted. That never should have been a thing, but putting this on Kabalite Warriors, if your army's going to be built around Kabalite Warriors, which I think you probably need a couple units because they are very, very strong. They give sticky objectives, and they give it to the transport that they're in as well. And then you've got all this other synergy, you know, them popping out of transports, getting Norse cover, getting, you know, Lance, which isn't really useful, but being out of the transport to be empowered, getting reroll hit, reroll wound because you have an Archon with them. Kabalite Warriors are definitely the backbone of the Drukhari army, and I do think that you're going to take at least a single unit of them. I do. Then you have Pounce on the Prey, 1 CP, strategic ploy. This is in your movement phase, just after a Drukhari infantry unit from your army disembarks from a transport that made a normal move. You target that infantry unit, and it's eligible to charge that turn. So very, very notable. You can't advance with your Raider, which you really don't need to. So you move the Raider 14 inches, you get out the 3 inches, so now you're at a 17-inch move, and then you get to charge. I think you're probably going to make it. And then you can be really funny and do Wraith-like retreat and jump back into the transport. That is so disruptive. It's like a meteor. It just comes out of nowhere, smashes through a unit, and then it just disappears. It's just so funny. So Pounce on the Prey, this is basically what a Land Raider has. And if any of you out there have ever played with a Land Raider in this edition, you know that the Land Raider is good, specifically because it allows you to move up and then get out and then charge. That's kind of always been the Land Raider's thing, and now you get Pounce on the Prey. So think about a unit of Wyches inside of a Raider. You really need to get to somewhere, so that Raider moves 14 inches, those dudes get out, and then they charge. Or we'll use the Incubi example again. Okay, so we're going to move the Raider 14 inches. The Incubi are going to get out 3 inches. They are then going to have ignores cover on their ranged weapons, which they don't have any, and then they're going to charge with +1 AP and Lance, and you're going to empower them for reroll all hits. That is a lot of things stacked on top of each other, and that unit will actually start putting out some damage. Incubi are 150 points for 10, so it's, you know, they're 15 points a piece, but being Lance, being re-rolling everything, that's really, really strong on them. And then just jumping out of the transport that moved really fast. If I have a bunch of different transports and I'm the one that's playing against the Drukhari and I know about this stratagem, it makes it really difficult for me to target priority when all of your raiders can just do the same thing. So this is a really, really good one. It gives you what a land raider has. It allows you to advance, or allows you to charge out of a transport that moved. You can't ask for something better than that. It's one of the best abilities like in the game, basically. There are others that are better, but being able to do that is very, very strong. And that's part of the reason why transports just in general are very strong with Sedition. Being able to move up and then get out the next turn and just charge with something, and having transports be so durable in the grand scheme of things because they're a tank and they actually, you know, tanks have been realized this edition, they have a much higher toughness than everything else. So this is a really good strat. I'm gonna stop talking about it now. All right, so Swooping Mockery, 1 CP strategic ploy. It's in your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends in a normal advance or fallback move. Guess what this does? Any of you that are watching. It happens after an enemy unit makes a normal advance or fallback move. You guys probably know what's coming next. You target one Drukhari transport from your army that is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units and is within 9 inches of the enemy unit that just ended the move. Your transport can make a normal move up to 6 inches. It's Phantasm, basically. That's a terrible comparison. It's not Phantasm. Phantasm's much better. This is very, very strong. It's kind of like Mists of Dimios. There's a couple of factions out there who have a reactive strat like this. It's good in all of them. Being able to just reactive move to your opponent really throws them off, and people aren't usually expecting it. At like super high level play, yeah, like people actually try to bait it out, but most people don't have that level of skill, or just don't care, or just have way too much on their mind. And so what they're gonna do is they're gonna move a unit up and not realize that you can just move 6 inches. They're gonna pre-measure, they're gonna go, okay, I've got a 6-inch charge on this tank, and you're like, actually it's 12, and you move that tank 6 inches. What else is this good for? You guys probably know what's coming. You take that tank, it's just poking its head out around cover, and so it was able to shoot you last turn. Well, now it's hiding. All those things that you moved over here to get a little bit of line of sight on that little nose piece that's sticking out through the terrain, yeah, I moved it back. And so now you can't see anything. And a bunch of your units are now out of position. I hate these stratagems because they are so powerful. And I'm sure people out there realize this. If you don't, that's why. They fuck you up so bad because they put you out of position. And this game doesn't have enough turns for that to like be okay. If you're out of position for 1 turn, it's a hard game. If you're out of position for 2 turns, you lose. That's just the way it goes. And this is going to put people out of position a lot. It's like Mist of Dimios. Every single time somebody uses Mist of Dimios, I'm just like, oh, I don't understand what's wrong with my brain and why I can't remember that you have Mist of Dimios, and then I just move things over here, and there's like line of sight to nothing else, and then you just teleport away. So this is one of those strats that's really, really disruptive, and you'll probably use it every turn, unless you're just right out in the center, like right out in the open. But if you're about to get shot by something crazy and someone wants to charge in, just move your unit 6 inches and just be like, sorry, bro, now you can't see me and you're out of charge range with that other unit. So that can be really, really good on a unit that's like a raider that has some Incubi inside or something like that. So all your transports, though, all these are transport based, which is good because transports are good, and these transports for the Drukhari are also really, really good. A raider is only 80 points. You know, comes with a Dark Lance. I think it auto advances 6 as its like ability, which is fine, but putting Kabalite Warriors in there makes it awesome because then it gets sticky objectives. They can shoot out of it. It is open topped. You know, it's firing deck 11. Super duper good stratagem, and it's very, very disruptive. Then you have the Night Shield. It's a 4-up invuln. It's in your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit selects its target. You target a Drukhari vehicle from your army, not a transport. But that's what Night Shields does. So Night Shields used to just be an ability on the transport, or on the flying tanks, and you know, the flyers, the tanks, the whatever else. It all had Night Shields, and Night Shields was different in different editions. It used to be a long time ago. I think it was -1 to be hit. Maybe also a 5-up invuln. It was definitely a 5-up invuln for a while. And now it's just a strat for 1 CP. It's a war gear strat. Gives you a 4-up invulnerable save. That will make your tank much more durable. So much more durable. To the point where it's going to take, so a Ravager is 115 points. It's going to take way more than 115 points to put that Ravager down when it has a 4-up invuln. especially when you spike. You can have like 3 different tanks shoot into this thing, maybe kill it. But you just took 3 of their tanks' firepower out of the game for that turn by killing 1 Ravager. So this is really, really good. It's great for your transports that are going to end up real close to the enemy as well. If you really need your transports to survive because you want to hop back inside of them, then you can also use it on something like that as well. There's a lot of play. I mean, it's 4-up invuln in the shooting phase. It's basically rotate ion shields for all of your tanks. Any of you who've played against Imperial Knights, you'll know that rotate ion shields can be pretty annoying. But what's the problem with rotate ion shields? Well, it's that people can bait that out and they can just focus on a different knight instead. So be careful when you use this. Make sure that you're using on the target that you need to survive and not the one that the person targets first, because you're like, oh, I'm getting shot, let me use 4-up invuln. And then they're like, great, I actually didn't care about this transport, I cared about the other one, and you used it on the wrong one. So just make sure that when you actually go to use this, that you know what you actually want to use it on, because that is what you're going to want to do. So those are your stratagems. They're all really good. Mortal Wounds, pretty cool. Get back into a transport, very good. Sustained hits 2, fine on Kabalite Warriors. Just sustained hits on something else, get out of the transport and charge. Super duper good. We have move after your opponent moves within 9 inches of you. So annoying. And then we have a 4-up invuln. They're all really good. Not a single one of them is 2 CP. They are all 1 CP apiece. All right, so let's take a look at some of their enhancements, because they've got some really good enhancements as well. First is the Phantasmal Smoke. Basically, it gives the bearer and his unit cover and stealth. So -1 to hit, and they're always in cover. So 20 points. This is probably best on something that can attach to Incubi, but giving them stealth and giving them cover, that's probably the best on them because they are a 3-up save. Anything else that you give this to, it's gonna be worth it, and no matter what. I'm just thinking like Archon probably takes this and takes, you know, a unit of 10 Kabalite Warriors. Now they basically have 3-up saves, because you do get +1 to your save against AP 0. So you're counting as being in cover, you're basically +1 save all the time, and you're -1 to be hit. That's pretty nice to have. I think for 20 points, it's good, because the Kabalite Warrior is 110, right? 110. And then you have the Archon himself, which I want to say 75, which we're going to get to him in a moment. But I, you know, off the top of my head, I think he's 75. So this puts him at, you know, call it 95, call it 90, 90 to 95, to give the rest of his unit reroll wounds when they're empowered, or reroll 1s all the time. Benefit of cover and stealth, plus some of your strats, like get out, get ignores cover. That's your army rule, but get out, get ignores cover. Get out, get sustained hits 2. I think this is pretty good. So if you're going to take an Archon, maybe consider taking this one. There's just other good ones in here, which I'll just get to next. So Spiteful Raider, 10 points. Each time the bearer's unit destroys an enemy unit in the fight phase, if it was in range of 1 or more objective markers, when the bearer's unit was selected to fight, you gain an additional pain token. So if you're worried about fighting armies that don't have a lot of pain tokens to give up, like when enemy units die, or if they have really low leadership, like a Custodes army would be very difficult for Dark Eldar just in general. They have leadership 5 army-wide, and they only have a couple of units. You have like 1, 2, 5, I guess your characters count as well. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. You got like 10 units on the table there, including the grav tanks and stuff and the characters. So this might be something to take. It's only 10 points. The thing is, you have to take this on something like a Succubus. Hey, I said it with a straight face that time. You have to take this on something like a Succubus because you're going to want to get into combat. So you could also put this on something that attaches to Incubi, but for 10 points, I think this is worth it, honestly. It just sucks that you can only really get it in combat. It'd be cool if you could get it in shooting, like if the enemy unit was on an objective and you kill it in the shooting phase, you get your pain token back kind of thing. I'd pay more points for it. I'd probably pay 20, up to 20 points for something like that. But not a bad thing to have if you're worried that you need to get additional pain tokens. So Sadistic Fulcrum, 15 points. It's 15 points. Each time you spend a pain token to empower the bearer's unit in the shooting phase, you can select a friendly Drukhari transport within 3 inches of the bearer's unit until the end of the phase. That transport is also empowered. The first thing I think of when I think about this specifically is a Tantalus, because the Tantalus is a transport. So being able to empower a Tantalus is pretty fucking good. The Tantalus we'll get to as well. It's got a decent amount of shooting, it can transport a bunch of guys, and it's pretty tough for what it is. So the Sadistic Fulcrum, you get your dudes out, your Kabalite Warriors out, you do a thing on them so that they're all juiced up on pain, and then they shoot harder for some reason because it makes them focus instead of making them less focused like a human. And then you're like, all right, now this Tantalus is also going to get that. So this is nice for the same reason that I just mentioned. You're not actually spending pain tokens in two places, because if you're playing against somebody who doesn't give up a lot of pain tokens, or who has good leadership, small amount of units, so on and so forth, this makes it so that you don't have to spend a pain token on that other unit. So it's almost a free pain token every time you use it, which is pretty cool for 15 points. I like it. Other than that, other than the combo with the Tantalus, I don't think you take this. Are you really gonna worry about having a Raider with one Bright Lance on it, empowered, or Dark Lance? But are you really worried about having that empowered? I don't think that's necessary. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking about that one. So I think that there's better options in here. Okay, so then you have the Nightmare Shroud. This is probably the best one. It's the best one. I'm gonna say it's the best one. So this is what it does. Each time the bear's unit disembarks from a transport, until the end of the turn, enemy units cannot use the Fire Overwatch stratagem to shoot the bear's unit. At a glance, this might not seem as good as it is, because when this is on, so what you do is you take an Archon, you put this on an Archon, you attach the Archon to Incubi. Those Incubi get out of a transport, they cannot be overwatched, they charge in and kill something, and then they use the stratagem to move back 7 inches and get back within the transport, and then do it all again next turn. So you can never overwatch this unit. It gets out, there's nothing you can do about it, you cannot shoot at it, and then it charges you, kills you, and then they get back inside. So this is definitely the best one if you're playing that kind of build. Maybe the other ones could be useful, and they are useful, but maybe some of the other ones could be more useful in certain builds with this detachment, but I run the Nightmare Shroud on the Archon, and I put him with a unit of Incubi, because he can attach to them. And yeah, you can't overwatch them, and they just get out of a transport that moves 16 inches, because it's probably a Tantalus, or maybe it's a Raider, but that moves really far. These guys then pop out, charge something, kill it, because that's another strat you have. So pop out, charge something, kill it with a ton of attacks, rerolling hits, rerolling wounds, +1 to wound, and then they just move back into the transport and do it all again next turn. So Nightmare Shroud, definitely the best one, just because you can't do anything about those Incubi, and they will hit really, really hard. If you can overwatch them, then you're going to, most likely. If you can hide behind walls and charge that way, that's always an option, so you don't necessarily need this, but there's gonna be situations when that's not possible, and so not being able to get overwatched is super duper useful. So, we've talked about the enhancements, we've talked about the stratagems, now we're gonna talk about some of their good data sheets. First things first, the Archon, I was right, he's 75 points. He's pretty cool. He comes with a 2-up invuln. Now this is a weird ability, he comes with a 2-up invuln until you fail it the first time. What does this guy do? Well, I've already told you like 3 fucking times. He gives you reroll 1s to wound if he's attached to a unit, each time that unit makes an attack. It's not just a shooting attack, it's any attack. However, when they're empowered, they reroll the wound roll instead. Getting reroll wounds is better than getting +1 to wound. So that's a huge damage boost. This goes with Kabalite Warriors. They're the best shooting unit that you have, besides, a couple things that aren't like infantry based. Well, Scourges are grid too, but for a basic battle line infantry unit, Kabalite Warriors are where it's at. I think they're probably 10 points too expensive. That's beside the point. Getting reroll wounds on all their anti-infantry guns, on all their shredders, on all their blasters, on their dark lance, on everything, plus the reroll hit because they're empowered. Like, you went from like a meh unit to rerolling all hits and all wounds with that unit. That's really, really good. And then once per battle, after your opponent uses a stratagem, if this model's your warlord and on the battlefield, he can use this ability, and if he does, you increase the cost of that stratagem by 1. So he has a Vect ability, because that's where Vect comes from. For all of you who are new to the game, Vect used to be a special character that you could take. He was on a Raider, he was a Raider, well, he was a Ravager, I think, and he literally had sex slaves on his model. And that's probably why they discontinued it. So, Vect is where this comes from. Abstervale Vect, I think is his name. This is what he did. He just made, he was the OG making your opponent cry. I don't exactly remember what he did before. I think it was an 8th edition, he made your stuff more expensive. And it was called like Agents of Vect was the stratagem. Anyway, you don't ever want to take more than 1 Archon because you're gonna lose out on this ability because you can only get it if he's your warlord. So it kind of sucks that you can't take 2 Archons And you can literally take 2 Archons. It's just that you're not going to get the ability on both of them, so you can't vector your opponent twice. You will get that rerolls to wound, but at that point, paying 75 points for just getting rerolls to wound on a toughness 3 infantry unit with a 4-up save that has to be outside of its transport, it's a bad call, I think. I don't think you really want to do that. So this guy's nice though. Let's talk about his guns. You're going to take the blast pistol. Don't even worry about the splinter pistol. I'm not even going to describe it. The blast pistol is strength 8, AP 3, and D3 damage. It's a pistol, it hits on 2s. It's nice to have. For melee, he's got 5 attacks, 2s to hit, 3s to wound infantry, otherwise he's strength 3. He's AP 2 and 2 damage. Now remember, if this guy charges out of a transport, this becomes AP 3 and it gains lance. And if you're empowered, you're rerolling all your hits. This actually becomes scary. You're gonna get 4 hits with this, with a reroll all wounds, because he's part of a unit, and lance. So you're wounding on 2s, and you're rerolling them. They're AP 3 and they're 2 damage. This guy will kill like 4 Space Marines by himself. Maybe 3. He'll kill a bunch of Space Marines by himself, so that's pretty good actually. He adds a little combat to your unit. So Archon, super duper good. He can lead the Court of the Archon, the Incubi, and Kabalite Warriors, so there you go. That's nice, 75 points. Archon's great, he's a support character, adds some combat to your unit, gives them reroll wounds, and that is awesome. So the Archon's a really good unit. Put them in your list, take at least one of them. Next up, we've got the Beastmaster. This unit is 105 points. You get 7 different models in this unit. It's a total of like 15 wounds or something. Let's just count, right? So you've got a Beastmaster. Well, he's got 3 wounds. Okay. Then you have a Clawed Fiend. Well, that thing has 5 wounds. Cool. You have 2 Chimeras. 2 wounds apiece. That's another 4. So far we're at 12. Then you have the 3 Razorwing Flocks. That's another 9. So that's actually 21 wounds out of this unit. So same movement, same toughness, different amount of wounds. But they all have a 6-up invuln. You've got some weird combat weapons. There's a whole, basically each guy's got a different thing. The main thing you care about is going to be the Clawed Fiend Fist. You know, dev wounds, 5 attacks, only hitting on 4s though. If you empower them, if you charge, then they're going to be +1 AP. They're going to be +1 to wound. That's pretty good. And then you're rerolling if you're empowered. So nice to have. This unit's great. It moves 9 inches as a scout. It's got a bunch of different models in the unit. There's 7 dudes, a whole bunch of wounds, hard to get through. I would put it up in my opponent's face and say, wall. Like I played a game with a buddy of mine this weekend. He was playing demons and I was playing my Black Templar list, which if you haven't seen the video on that list, go check it out. But we played the Black Templars list and I played against his demons. He had a bunch of big monsters and my scouts just scouted up and got in his way. And I said, time walk, my turn. And so he just couldn't move through them. That's what these guys are going to probably do for you. The fact that they're so durable for the amount of points that they are and the fact that they can scout 9 inches. 9-inch scout is big. That gets you onto a lot of objectives turn 1. That'll get you onto the center objective with their move because they do move 12. So you're looking at a 21-inch move turn 1 with these guys plus an advance, so a minimum of 22. Like, I don't need to really explain much more. They're going to do a whole lot of secondaries for you. They're going to get in people's way, and that's really all they do, and I'm totally cool with that because units that do that are very, very strong. When you can just throw a random-ass unit in front of your opponent turn 1, get in their way, and make a huge wall around all the terrain, that really throws people off. And a lot of people don't expect that. I don't see people do it very often. I do see it at high level, which I like to see, but when I'm at like, you know, RTTs and stuff, I very rarely see people trying to move block. I don't know if people just don't know about it or what, but that's what I would do with this unit. They're super duper good. They're expensive, you know. I'm paying 105 points for a scouting unit just to have that utility. Kind of feels bad sometimes, but dude, you've got so many wounds in this unit that it's going to be a pretty effective wall. It's only going to live for 1 turn. But if you don't need it to be a wall, if you just want to get up onto an objective and have, you know, 7 OC on that objective turn 1, while being pretty durable because you have 21 wounds with different models, different wound characteristics, you're going to lose damage between these wounds because they're all random. Like you have 5 wounds, 3 wounds, this one has 2. But a lot of times when you get hit by 2 damage weapons, you're going to be putting those on things with 3 wounds and you lose damage that way. So you get my point. This is a good unit. We are going to move on to the Cronos. For 50 points, they have a 5-up Feel No Pain, they're toughness 7 with 7 wounds, a 3-up save, and a 6-up invuln. I'm down with that for 50 points. So this is what he does. He's got Pain Parasite. Each time a pain token is removed from your pain token pool to empower a unit, if that unit was within 9 inches of this model, you rolled a d6 on a 4-up, you gain that pain token back. So this is another way to regenerate your pain tokens. So I wouldn't probably. You take at least one Cronos in every army because your army is based around power from pain. Your army wants to be re-rolling hits all the time. That's what it wants. So if your opponent's not dying, if you're playing against Custodes or you're playing against Imperial Knights, or you just generally don't have a lot of units for your opponent to kill, or your opponent doesn't have a lot of units for you to kill, I should say, you're going to want a unit like this that can generate extra pain tokens, because you're going to need those pain tokens for your army to become more effective, especially as the game goes on. This is very, very good. For 50 points, this is a support unit. This is be really nice for just chilling kind of on the backfield. They take up space. Nobody wants to shoot at them because they have 7 wounds and they're toughness 7 with a 5-up feel no pain. So yeah, there's really no going wrong with the Cronos. I understand it doesn't do anything, but neither does my 170 point unit of infiltrators with a psyker. They don't do shit. Neither does this thing, but sometimes that's fine because its supportability is good enough and its durability is good enough. Like, it's just a good unit. Like, it's 50 points, man. It has some combat, it's got some shooting, it doesn't actually matter that much. It does, you can read it, you know, it's on screen there, but overall, just for 50 points, just for this thing that kind of helps your army work better, takes up space, you know, blocks out deep strikers, it sits on an objective, it's annoying because it's so durable, it's OC2, not that it really matters with one model, but you can see the utility of this unit, and so it's going to be one of those nice 50-point models. You know, you're at 1930, and you're like, you know what, I forgot my Cronos. Pop the Cronos in there, 1980, take a 20-point upgrade, call it a day, 2,000 points. So this thing is super scary looking. Yeah, I would not want to be anywhere near this if I saw it in real life, but I would totally put one in my list because I do, because these are great, and you should put one in there too. And next, I will talk about Grotesques just a little bit. They're 180 points for 6. They can all take a liquefier gun, so it's an AP1 flamer, which is pretty cool. You know, 6-up invuln, toughness 5, 4 wounds, but they've got a 5-up feel no pain. So that makes them pretty durable. And then in combat, they basically have a heavy bolter type profile. It's strength 5, AP1, damage 2, hits on 3s with 4 attacks apiece. These are fall from grace for sure, but when you've got +1 to wound and you've got +1 AP, now you've got 4 attacks, rerolling everything because they have power from pain. So they're rerolling all their hits. They're +1 to wound at AP2 and 2 damage flat. So these will actually start putting out a lot of damage, but we're gonna move past them otherwise. They're not really on the list. Incubi. Incubi are good. So we have toughness 3, 3-up save, 1 wound, but the 3-up save is nice. They also have a 5-up invulnerable save, which makes them a little bit more durable. I just wish they had 2 wounds. The Exarch, the Dark Eldar Exarch, which is called a Claviex. Yeah, we're gonna go with Claviex. He's got 2 wounds, just like an Exarch from Eldar. So, pretty cool. These guys, 3 attacks apiece. Strength 4, AP2, damage 2. So now they're Strength 4, +1 to wound, and they're rerolling all their hits, and they're AP3. That's really good, really good, really good. Jump out of a transport, +1 to hit, +1 to or rerolling hits, +1 to wound. AP3. These will actually get through things pretty well. Let's just do some quick theory hammer. 30 attacks. All right, rerolling hits. You're gonna get 10 misses. Out of those 10, you're gonna get another 6. You get 26 hits. 26 hits. Let's say you're wounding something that's toughness 7 or less. So you're wounding it on 4s. That's 13 wounds at AP3 and 2 damage. This unit's 150 points. It's not so bad. They also have power from pain, so they're going to be getting that reroll. They have a terrible ability, which I hate so much. At the start of the fight phase, each enemy unit within engagement range must take a battle shock test. You guys know how I feel about battle shock at this point. I fucking hate it. But their army rule also revolves around battle shocking your opponent. So I hate it. There's no 2 ways about it. I hate it. But if you're trying to be objective about the rule and trying to make use of it, this isn't bad, because this could potentially get you a pain token. If you charge multiple units with this thing, and it's anything, it could be a tank, it could be a monster, they take a battle shock test. So being battle shocked is annoying more than anything else because you can't use stratagems on the unit. A lot of the time I'll try to get a couple of units on an objective if possible, depending on the build that I'm using. So a lot of the times, like, being battle shocked just doesn't fucking matter. But it matters for these guys because if you become battle shocked and they're your opponent, they gain that pain token back. And like I've been saying, you want to generate as many as you can because you want to be re-rolling your hits as often as possible. It's a great ability. It's like a 50% damage boost. So do that. Do that and take these and kill stuff and then make them battle shock before you fight them. Get some stuff back. It's a little nice thing to have. I just wish it was a different ability. But like I've been saying, they're 150 points for the 10 of them. So 30 attacks with all those +1 to wound, AP 3 when you charge, rerolling hits, combat weapons, 2 damage apiece. These things are going to get through stuff pretty quickly. If I have 13 wounds against, custodians, they're going to fail half of those. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Say they make 7, so they take 6. That's 3 dead custodians. Yeah, your unit's dead in return, but you killed 3 custodians with this 150 point unit. That's probably a pretty average trade. They're about 50 points apiece. So in that example, they hit pretty hard back, but yeah, maybe that was a bad example, but you can kind of get what I'm saying. With all those attacks, that volume of attacks at AP 3 and +1 to wound, 2 damage, they'll get through stuff. They'll even get through vehicles. If you're wounding on 5s with 26 hits, let's say 24, so 8 wounds-ish, almost 9. 9 wounds at a 6-up save on a vehicle, you're going to kill a vehicle with that. Like, you'll kill a Predator, you'll kill a Lancer. You won't kill a Land Raider, but you'll kill all that other stuff. And that's pretty sweet. So this unit is dumb, and it can hop back inside of a transport after it attacks for 1 CP. They move 7 inches. They just move back within 3 of the transport that they got out of in the same turn that moved and allowed them to get out and charge with a different stratagem. So these are really good to have. They're just a huge damage output unit, and they're actually effective now, which I like because they were bad before, and now they're not bad. Now we have the Kabalite Warriors. I've talked to these to death at this point, but these guys are super fast. They move 8 inches. They got a 4-up save, which they've never had in any other edition, I don't think. So they're a lot more survivable than they used to be. You pop these guys in cover. Now they're rocking a 3-up save, which is pretty cool. We don't care about their melee weapons at all. Their ability is that they give out sticky objectives, and they give it to the transport that they're with. It's just so nice to have that, because then your transport flies over to an objective. Well, it starts on an objective, flies over to a new objective. Your opponent hopefully doesn't kill it. Even if they do, your guys pop out. Hopefully they live. And if they live, well, they sticky that objective, and then they reroll all hits and wounds against you and kill some stuff. So this is a very good unit. The only problem I have with this unit is that it's 110 points, but it's 110 points for a reason. You can get 4 different special weapons on this unit. They can take a Splinter Cannon, a Shredder, a Dark Lance, and a Blaster. And then the dude guy, I'm just going to call him the Sergeant. The Sergeant gets a Blast Pistol. So yeah, there's so many special weapons in this unit, and you're putting them inside of transport usually, so you can shoot out of it if you really need to, if you want to keep the unit safe. They add 4 special weapons to your Raider, which becomes empowered and rerolls all of its hits. It's just really good. Really good stuff. So I'm not going to talk about these guys too much. They are your battle line. They're going to be 2 OC. They're decent for what you get there. It's just that they should be a little bit cheaper. They kind of fill the role of a battle line unit, but one that can actually put out some decent damage. These actually become threatening to your opponent, which is kind of interesting because you've got so many other little units that are also threatening to your opponent. They play really, really well with the Sky Raider, Sky Splinter detachment thing because of all the transports. Drukhari have always really liked their transports. I remember when I first started playing this game competitively, it was 5th edition. I started playing in 4th, competitively in 5th. I remember I met this guy named Jeff, and Jeff has a beautiful Dark Eldar army. And he was crushing people with that army back then. I remember playing him and being like, what is this nonsense? These tanks are so good. I don't exactly remember how it worked back then, but I remember Jeff introduced me to Dark Eldar, and ever since I saw his army, I was like, I need to play this army at some point in my life, and eventually I picked it up. So Kabalite Warriors, completely off topic, Kabalite Warriors are your basic battle line guys. They're just damage dealing units, and they're just pretty good for being able to hold down objectives because they sticky them. So you can't really go wrong with some Kabalite Warriors. I think you take at least 1 unit with an Archon in there, getting that rerolls to wound, but if not an Archon, at least 1 unit, probably in a transport, maybe not, but just take 1 unit. Just make your backfield sticky, okay? Making things sticky is my favorite thing in the world. All right, Lelith. Lelith is great. Lelith has fights first, and I hate that they have to add this into her ability. So like, Brides of Death, this is what she gets. While she's leading a unit, models in that unit have fights first. you don't need to write that in there, because if you just click on fights first, this is going to say units with this ability, units with this ability, units with this ability. So you don't need to write that in the rules section that she gives it to the unit, because it's in the fucking rules of fights first. Anyway, she adds 1 to the strength characteristic of the attacks and 1 to the armor penetration of the attacks for the models that she's in the unit with. So she's hilarious. She has 8 attacks with anti-infantry 2 up, sustained hits 2, and AP 2. So when she charges in, because she's attached to a unit, it becomes AP 3. And because you're going to empower that unit, it's going to become AP 4. And it's anti-infantry 2+ with sustained hits 2. She will kill an entire squad of guys by herself. And remember, she's +1 to wound as well, because she probably, hopefully, hopped out of a transport. Wow, wow, wow. Wowzers. 85 points, though, for little Miss Lelith Hesperex. But damn. And then once per battle, she can become ridiculous and get 12 attacks and get a 3-up invulnerable save. So if you're worried that her unit is going to get completely ripped apart, 3-up invuln all day long. She'll live through most things, you know, until the next turn when she doesn't have that anymore. But at that point, hopefully she's ripped through a unit with her squad of witches. And that's all that she can lead. She can only lead witches. But I think witches actually are usable because of the, you know, the thing with your +1 AP when you get empowered in the fighting phase. That actually makes them good, especially with Lelith, because they become AP 3 with Lance. And it's just a ton of attacks with, well, they become Strength 4 as well. But AP 3 with Lance, that's just great. Rerolling all your hits. I like the sound of that. So she goes up with the unit. She helps put some damage on the opponent. She's really, really fast. The witches themselves are very, very fast as well. And they're kind of just meant to get out there and bog down your opponent, because they get a 4-up invuln when they're in combat. So as long as you can kind of stay in combat with the witches, then you're in a really good spot, because they're much harder to deal with when they're in combat with that 4-up invuln. Witches have always been in a weird spot where they've always had this 4-up invuln in combat, but not from shooting. And then once they get into combat, you're like, oh my god, I can't kill this unit anymore. And it's been an interesting ride seeing how witches have changed throughout the editions. But Lelith, she's good, she's on the list. She's going to be able to hop out of transports with her girls, kill a bunch of stuff, probably hop back inside the transport, and that's really where I think that she shines. I think that's where the witches shine, just in general with that stratagem. I forget what it's called already, but being able to jump out of a raider and just murder something dead with Lelith and her unit, and then hop back inside the raider to just do it next turn, because remember, that raider is behind a wall that you can't see. This becomes really hard to deal with. This Incubi, you know, anything like that that's able to get out of a transport, kill something in combat, and then get back into the transport, you're going to have a hard time dealing with that unit. If you cannot deal with that transport, if there's other stuff in the way, like move blocking the firing lanes so that you can't move through them to actually see the transport, just as an example, it starts becoming problematic very, very quickly. All right, man, let's talk about some Drakes. The Mandrakes. That joke was horrible. I'm sorry you had to hear that. The Mandrakes, they have a 5-up invulnerable save. They move 8, but I don't care about any of that. All I care about is the fact that they are infiltrators and they have fade away. It's the same exact thing that scouts get, except there's no 6 inches restriction. So at the end of your opponent's turn, if they're not within engagement range, you can remove it from the battlefield, put it in strategic reserve. Now, you must set it up the next turn, because it says in the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away horizontally. We all know how that works, but the point is, it says that you set it up. It doesn't say you may set it up. It says set it up anywhere on the battlefield. So you have to come back down the next turn, which is fine. You just put them behind a wall. They've got stealth, infiltrators. It's fine. They basically just deep strike around, which is pretty cool because they don't actually have deep strike, but they just get deep strike with this. Guess how many points this unit is? You were right. They're 65 points. 65-point infiltrating unit with stealth that jumps away. Sounds a lot like scouts to me. The only difference here is obviously the wound count. There's major differences here, but the wound count is different. These guys don't have scout, but scouts don't have stealth, and they don't have power from pain or 5-up invuln or any of this stuff. So they're basically the same unit at the end of the day. I use 3 units of Mandrakes in my army because being able to get secondaries is really important, and when you can just pop up and down the table, it's so good. It's so good. Now, maybe I'm just bad at this game for playing tactical secondaries instead of just building a list around fixed secondaries, which I can do with some Black Templar armies. It's just like every time that I try to build a list that does fixed, I just lose. So, These guys are awesome. Put these in your list. They're just designed to get you secondaries. I'm not going to talk too much about them because that's really all they do. They do have a cool ranged gun. It is devastating wounds with 2 shots, so you know you can take 10 shots from these guys, get a couple dev wounds from them. But if they're out in the open exposed like that, they're probably going to die. And something that I'll just mention, if your opponent has a bunch of units like this, please take the time to get rid of them. I know that you're like, hey, Scout Squad or Mandrake Squad, like what are you going to do to me? You're not going to damage me. That's the point. You need to kill this unit because it stops your opponent from getting more points than you and winning the game. So just a little tidbit there. Maybe actually try to focus these units down and try to get rid of them, you know, as soon as you can. Mandrakes are super duper good. What you're going to do is what I do is I take 3 units and I infiltrate one of them and I make a wall and I'm like, cool, you can't move through this turn 1. Great. Oh, I went first. Now it's an even closer wall to you. It's actually right at your deployment zone. The only thing you got to watch out for that kind of stuff, guys, is Overwatch, especially with 1 wound models like this. If somebody's got flamers or just a unit in general with a large volume of fire, beware of the Overwatch because the Overwatch will kill you. But otherwise, you're going to move them up, you're going to create a wall, the other 2 units going to hang back, they'll probably infiltrate up somewhere else, but they'll be safe. Turn 1, you create a wall. Cool. My turn, great. My dudes pop off the table, the other 2 units. Oh look, I got cleanse and investigate signals. Okay, my other units over here will cleanse, coming down in the corners with my 2 Mandrake squads, boom, 4 points for investigate signals. So very, very strong unit for that purpose alone. And a lot of the times, you know, people aren't going to be focusing on these types of things when you've got a bunch of transports and witches and incubi in their face. So there you go, Mandrakes, pretty good. You're not going to really use these very much with your detached, like what I mean, you're not going to put these in a transport and be like charging out and getting lanced with their combat weapon. They're not designed for that, but for 195 points, taking 3 units of these things, I can guarantee you these will get you points every single turn. So if you like getting points and you like winning games, put 200 points of Mandrakes in your army and you will thank me. How about Raiders? Do you guys like Raiders? Do you guys like Raid of... what is it? Anyway, so Raiders, right? 10 wounds, toughness 8, 6 up invuln, 14-inch move. They only are OC2 though, so they're pretty paper thin. These are awesome though, because they have deep strike and they have firing deck 11. Yeah, they have deep strike, so you could put a bunch of guys in these things, deep strike them down, shoot out of them, like empower them, shoot out of them, and just do fun stuff like that. It's pretty cool. You could deep strike in, use a strat to get out, and then charge. The problem there is you have to remain outside of 9 when you do that, so yeah. But this thing's great. It can carry 11 guys. It cannot transport flying dudes, so your Scourges cannot get in a Raider. Don't do that. Don't put 2 units of Scourges in a Raider and shoot a bunch of Dark Lances out, because you're cheating. So, Raider is 80 points. It's the same amount of points as a Rhino, I think. I think Rhino's 80 points, might be 75. It doesn't matter, we're not talking about Marines, we're talking about Dark Eldar. It's 80 points. And it's awesome. It comes with a Dark Lance that's going to be hitting on 3s, which is nice to have, because Dark Lances, unlike las cannons, are +2, so they're d6 +2 damage. Shorter range, but who cares, because the table is smaller and everything has to be in the center. So 36 inches, awesome. There's not much to say here besides the fact that these are just a good transport for 80 points. They're not as durable as something like a Rhino, being toughness 8 with a 4-up save, but that's okay, because a Rhino doesn't have firing deck 11. And a Rhino doesn't move 14 inches, and a Rhino doesn't have deep strike. So all those things combined is really great. And because your army with your Skyspinter, it revolves around transports, you want to be getting out of things like this to be able to get your Ignores cover and be able to get your Lance on your combat weapons, because you have to be disembarked from a transport in order to get those abilities. These are going to be one of your backbone units. I run 2 of these usually, if not more, depending on the build that I'm running. So Raiders are great. For 190 points, you have a Raider with 10 guys inside. The Raider gains all of its weapons. Once they finally get through that Raider, which won't take too long, but once they finally get through that Raider, well, then you've got to deal with the 10 guys inside that have an Archon, that shoot you with a bunch of stuff. They reroll hits, they reroll wounds, they're on the objective, they're OC2. Good stuff. These are going to be great, so I would recommend taking at least 2 of them. You can do a lot of really stupid things with Raiders. They're so weird looking, like they're so weirdly shaped. They're very long, like a boat. It's literally a flying boat from like Treasure Planet or something. And they can move block very effectively because they're so damn long, and you can just spam these things. And because they're so fast, they can get, and they have fly, so they can move over stuff. Normally you don't, because most of the terrain in the game is 5 inches or higher in height, and geometry says just go around. So just go around with your 14-inch flying thing, and if you really need to, you can auto-advance 6 inches. That's its ability with your Aether Sails. So you can move an empty transport 20 inches right up to an objective, tank shock something with it if you need to after just moving normally. It's not going to do all that much damage, but you have some options there. But mainly for 80 points of now I'm a secondary unit and I'm in your way, I think that that's awesome. You disembark a squad, like a witch squad or something, or what is it called? Incubi, that's the one. You disembark some Incubi, you fly up with them, they kill something in combat, your transport moved over somewhere else, and then they moved within the range of the transport to get back inside. There's so much play with these things, especially in this detachment. You have to take a couple of raiders. They're gonna do so much for you, and the more that you play with them, the more you're gonna realize how many options they give you. So put at least 2 of them in your list, shoot a Dark Lance at people, shoot a bunch of other stuff out of it, let it get destroyed, put your guys on that objective. That's how it plays. The Scourges. This unit is 110 points for 5 of them. So you get 5 Kabalite Warriors for the same amount of points. The difference here is pretty stark. These guys move 14 inches. So they do have twice the move. Well, actually not quite, because Kabalite Warriors move 8. These guys move 14, so they're very, very fast. They're infantry as well, so they can ignore terrain. Pretty much effectively ignore terrain, because they could just move right through the walls instead of going over it, which I hate. Just change that, GW. Just make fly the same, just make fly the way it should be, and make it so that terrain is just ignored. Anyway, each of these dudes, they have a Dark Lance. You might take a different weapon, but you're going to take a Dark Lance because the Dark Lance is the best weapon to take. Strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage apiece. It does hit on 4s, but hopefully you're going to empower this unit, and they're going to be hitting on 4s, but with rerolls. So you're looking at 3 hits, 75% chance, 3 hits with Dark Lances. Now that's all cool, except now this unit has jump, shoot, move. Like, you know what I mean? They shoot, they move again, and then they shoot next turn, and then they move again, and then they shoot, and it's just so ridiculous to have that ability, especially on a unit like this that is not a secondary unit. This is an I shoot you unit. So if your opponent doesn't have any indirect fire stuff, these things are going to give them a headache the entire game, dude. The whole game. You move 14 inches through walls. You don't have to worry about firing lanes. You're just going to move and be able to shoot stuff. Super duper good. I run at least one of these units in almost every list because they're basically a Devastator squad, but for Drukhari. And Devastator squads don't normally get to move after they shoot, which means that they can hide. So a lot of units that have this ability, you generally use it to move up to an objective or to make a wall or something along those lines to steal points away from your opponent. Not this unit. This unit goes, I have Phantasm all the time on my turn, so I'm going to shoot you, and then I'm going to move behind this terrain, and then it's your turn. And then I'm going to move 14 inches to the other firing lane, shoot you, and then move another 6 inches behind the wall. And you just can't get to them if you don't have any indirect fire stuff because they're too fast. They move 21 inches, or they move 20 inches a turn. That's a third of the way from one side of the table to the other. It's actually, yeah, it's exactly a third. So if they start on the literal edge of the table, in 2 turns, in 3 turns, they're on the other side of the table while shooting you the whole time. So this unit is just out there to do a ton of damage to your opponent. If you really want to, you could swap out some of their ranged weapons for something else, maybe like the Splinter Cannon. I don't think you need to, but it's either going to be the Haywire Blaster or the Dark Lance, because the Haywire Blaster is actually really, really effective against vehicles. That's going to give you 8 shots from the unit, hitting on 4, so that's 6 hits after rerolls, and their dev wounds and their anti-vehicle 4+. So that's going to be 9 dev wounds on a vehicle. I don't know which one's better. I don't have the math up in front of me, but either the Haywire Blaster or the Dark Lance is what you're going to want to take there. Personally, I think you take the Dark Lance simply because it is naturally strength 12. It doesn't rely on anti-vehicle. So if you need to shoot it at something else like a Terminator squad or something that's tough and big and scary, you're not wounding it on like 6s or 5s. You're wounding it on 2s because you're strength 12 instead of strength 3. But the Scourges are just super good. 110 points makes me scoff. And then I'm like, oh yeah, they can move 6 inches after they shoot. So, Scourges, dumb unit. Take a unit of them. Succubus, yeah, she's fine. you know, 45 points, so she's damn cheap. She's I'm not gonna say it this time. She's cheap. She's a cheap, sucky. She gives you sustained hits, and she gives you fights first. Yeah, I mean, 45 points. How can you go wrong for 45 points? I don't think you can. Because you're going to take an enhancement on her probably, which is going to be that 10-point Spiteful Raider thing. So when they get into combat, she's 50 points or 55 points plus the 90 points for Wyches. So you're at 145 points plus the transport that they're in. So yeah, but you're at 145 points to get out, get empowered, be +1 to wound, +1 AP, and then getting back your pain token, which is pretty cool. But she is another one of those very one-dimensional units in this index. She's a combat monster. She actually has a gun. She can take a blast pistol, so strength at AP3, D3 damage at 6 inches. But, I mean, otherwise, yeah, she's okay. She's got 6 attacks, anti-infantry 3+, you know, AP2, so AP3 when she charges, plus lance, so +1 wounds, pretty cool. 40 points, 45 points. Good. She's a good unit for 45 points, especially because she has a 4-up invuln. Then we've got the Talos, another unit that is very, very good. These are 80 points apiece. You used to be able to take them in units of 3. You cannot anymore. You can only take them in units of 2. Each one of these guys has a liquefier gun and a haywire blaster. And then for combat, they're going to have their macro scalpel thing, or no, the gauntlets actually. They're going to have the gauntlets. It's 5 attacks on 4s, but it is strength 8, AP2, and 3 damage. Guess what? These guys have power from pain, so you can empower them, and you can give them +1 AP, not +1 to wound, but +1 AP, so they're strength 8, AP3, 3 damage flat. Unfortunately, you can't put these in a transport, so you can reroll hits though. You can empower them with 5 attacks, rerolling hits, strength 8, AP3 when you charge, flat 3 damage. Plus, they've got guns, and I like guns. Their guns are great. They have a twin Drukhari haywire blaster, so it's 2 shots, but it's twin linked. So you have 2 of these in a unit, it's 4 shots apiece. Let's just say you empower them, 3 hits. Now you're rerolling wounds against vehicles. So anti-vehicle 4+, dev wounds, and twin linked, flat 3 damage. So kind of no matter which way you slice that, you're gonna get about 2 wounds. It's almost closer to 3, it's a 75% chance. So on 3 dice, you know, that gets weird math, but these things will do some damage to a vehicle as well, and be very durable because they're toughness 7 with 7 wounds, they've got a 6-up invuln, 3-up save, and they have a 5-up feel no pain. These things have always had a 5-up feel no pain. There were times when you could boost them to a 4-up feel no pain, I think, and they were egregious with a 5-up feel no pain with 3-man units being like way too cheap. So they're still very good in this edition. I actually don't run these in my list. I just don't use them, but they're very, very strong. They're only 80 points apiece. Like toughness 7, 7 wounds. It's very hard to get through, and they're another one of these units. They're kind of a bully unit because you can put them right up there and just be like, deal with it. And when you're only spending 160 points on that, you know, your raiders with guys inside that are behind them, they're usually not going to be the target because they've got to deal with these things first. And if they don't, you know, they're getting hit by 5 to 10 strength 8 attacks that are damage 3 apiece, AP 3. Yeah, it's not going to do a whole lot against vehicles, but that's why they've got their, you know, their gun, their haywire blaster. And then, yeah, each one's got a twin liquefier gun. So, you know, strength 4, AP 1. Torrent weapon that's twin linked. That's pretty nice to have as well. So overall, they're just really nice. So they also have an ability. If this unit destroys an enemy unit until the end of the battle, it is empowered. So let me just read that again for you. If this unit destroys an enemy unit until the end of the battle, it is empowered. That's very easy to do. All these have to do is destroy something. Doesn't have to be something big, doesn't have to be anything specific. It's just anything. And for the rest of the battle, they're re-rolling all their hits. They're re-rolling their charges. They're like, what? That's really, really strong. If you get lucky and just pop a tank, like you just pop a transport with their twin-linked re-rollable thing, because you spend a CP to empower them, they re-roll all their hits, and they're twin links, so they reroll all their wounds. Assuming they kill a vehicle, let's say they're shooting at like a piranha. Piranha's dead. Dead piranha. And now they're empowered for the rest of the game. They reroll their charges. They're +1 AP when they charge. They're rerolling their hits, shooting and combat. That's so fucking good, dude. So Talos are very, very durable. They're very good for bullying things. They're very good for just sitting on objectives. They are also OC of 2. So, you know, you got 2 of them in a unit. It's 4 OC. Got to deal with it. It's rerolling everything. I don't know how many of these you take in a list. If you're building a list around them, then probably 6. But another thing that doesn't really work with your Skyspinter Assault, simply because you can't put them in transports, so you cannot get that +1 to wound. You can't get that ignores cover, not that they really need it with their Dev Wounds gun, but they don't really fit in to that detachment, but I still think that you run them. And I've seen people throw very, very hard-hitting units into these things and not kill them. It's just hard, you know, unless you're strength 14, you're wounding them on 3s. They have 7 wounds apiece. You need to get 4 damage to hits through on these. But actually, you need to get more, because remember, they have a feel no pain. So when you get 8 wounds on these guys, they'll probably make 3, and they have 2 wounds left. You get another one on them, maybe they make another one. That's 10 wounds to kill one of these things. And there's another one in the unit. So for 3 damage, it takes 3 damage weapons to kill one, except it has feel no pain. So if you take 9 damage, you're gonna make 3 feel no pains. 9 minus 3 is 6. Well, they have 7 wounds, so they're actually absorbing even another hit. So yeah, feel no pain is very, very strong, especially when it's 5 feel no pain, and Talos are just really, really good. So then you have Urien, I think that's how you say his name, Urien. So this guy's awesome. He's got a 4-up invuln and a 4-up feel no pain with 5 wounds. He's tough. He's Ford tough, okay? This guy also repairs stuff. He's like the only thing in the army that does this, and it's at the end of your movement phase. Makes me want to cringe, because everything should be at the end of the movement phase, but this model can heal 1 friendly Cronos, Talos, Grotesque, or Wrack unit within 6 inches. If it does, 1 model in that unit regains 3 lost wounds. However, if it's Wracks, you'd return 3 destroyed models to the unit instead. Amazing. This allows you to, so returning models to units is extremely good, because if you weren't on the objective, well, now you are on the objective, and your OC is 2 per guy. So for this, you can pop 6 OC onto an objective with this ability from a unit that has like 1 guy left. That's very, very good, and being able to repair 3 lost wounds is also very good. The problem that I have with these abilities, for the most part, is pretty minimal, which is that units generally tend to die all at once, but there's a lot of times when they don't. And when they don't, that's when your Tech Marines are in there repairing your stuff, and that's when these guys are in there repairing your units. He then has a 2-up, get back, you know, come back to life, which is cool. And that's with all of his wounds remaining. He has 80 points. But I think for just a super durable guy who just comes back to life and can also repair stuff, not bad. He has Homunculus Tools and Edward Scissorhands. Stands infantry 2-up, you know, -1, D3 damage, 5 attacks. It's fine. But you're really here for his durability, the ability to get back up with full runes remaining, to say 4-up invuln and a 4-up feel no pain. Again, you gotta deal with me. And being able to repair stuff is really good. So if you're playing this in a, you know, Talos heavy, Wrack heavy, Homunculus heavy build, he's an auto-include, but otherwise, he's just good. The Venom is cool. It's 70 points. It can carry 6 dudes. I don't know how they fit on there, but they do. So it can carry 6 dudes, and it can split them into 2 different units, which is actually very useful. You could split like a Kabalite Warrior, Kabalite? I can never say that right. You can split a Kabalite Warrior unit in half with these, or Wyches, but it's only those 2. It literally says, before the battle, at the start of the declared battle formation step, you can select 1 Kabalite Warrior unit or Witch unit from your army. It splits into 2. This, I think, is really good with the Kabalite Warriors, because it takes a unit that can sticky objectives, and it splits into 2 units that can sticky objectives. So now you have a double team happening here, and it gets real sticky when the double team's happening. That's really, really good to have. The Wyches being split, I don't get it. I don't know why you would ever do that, but you can. But overall, I'm just not super thrilled with these things, but they are very good because they're a nice little transport. They're very fast at 14 inches. You know, with your transport stuff, you can get out. You can put like 5 Incubi in one of these things. I would take at least 1 Venom, though, to be able to split a squad of Kabalite Warriors in half. I think that is its most useful feature. For guns, it's got a splinter cannon. For combat, no one fucking cares. But the main reason, while they're on the list, is because of their ability. Athletic Aerialists. At the end of the fight phase, if there are no models currently embarked within this transport, you can select 1 friendly Drukhari infantry unit that has 6 or fewer models that is wholly within 6 of this transport. You can't do Grotesques or flying things. Unless that unit is within engagement range of one of our enemy units, it can embark within this transport. So this is basically the stratagem that I've been raving about since the beginning of this episode. It basically gives that to you. The only restriction is that you have to fit inside the transport and you have to be wholly within 6. So as long as your transport's kind of flying up with them, maybe even charging in with your guys, then this is pretty good because you're going to end up within 6 inches of it. and there's no stratagem required. You just get back inside that transport, and that can be really annoying for your opponent, because now they have to crack the transport open to get to the guys inside again, that are then going to charge them next turn and do some damage to them. And it's especially nice if you have multiple Venoms, because then multiple units can be doing this. You could like get out with your whole army, charge with a whole bunch of different things, and then just get back in your transports. No other army in the game can do that. And then after you get out, if your Venom doesn't need to be supporting your guys anymore, it's moves 14, it's real small, can get around corners and stuff, can block out areas of the board, can start doing some secondaries for you. Good unit overall. Just a little overcosted maybe, but for its abilities and such, there's no way that I could justify reducing its cost. It's just, it has way too many good abilities on a very bad profile, is my problem with it. But that doesn't make it a bad unit. It's just different. So, very good. Take at least one. 2 Raiders, at least 1 Venom, 3 Ravagers, because Ravagers are crazy. Let's talk about Ravagers. 115 points. Toughness 9, 11 wounds. Only got a 4-up save, but toughness 9, 11 wounds. Super fast, 14-inch move, OC of 3, so about average. But for guns, it's going to have 3 Dark Lances. They're going to be hitting on 3s. You're going to be rerolling hits because you're going to empower this thing. But if you don't have any pain tokens to use, then you can just use its ability, which is Eradicate the Foe. Each time this model makes an attack that targets an enemy unit that is at its starting strength, reroll a hit roll of 1. If a unit has a starting strength of 1, this ability only applies if the target has its starting number of wounds. So it rerolls hit rolls of 1s naturally, as long as you're shooting at a unit that is at, starting strength. So right off the bat, it just looks at a tank that it hasn't been damaged, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna reroll hits against you, basically. So that actually saves you that need to empower this thing. However, if you run into situations where you need to be +1 to hit, like if you're fighting up against stealthy units or something like that where they're making you -1 to hit, it's going to be very, very nice to be rerolling your hits because you're hitting on 4s. That is pretty good. But for 115 points, 36-inch range, sits back, shoots down the firing lanes, there's other stuff in their face that they kind of have to deal with as well. They are not super durable. They're only 11 wounds, toughness 9, but they're so good for 115 points. These went up as well. Not recently, but they did go up a little bit, and they are still absolutely worth using because they're just too good not to take. 3 Darkland shots for 115 points on a pretty decent body. Overall, this is going to be one of those units that's just the gunline unit. That's its entire purpose. It's not really there to help you win the game past just blowing your opponent's units up, but that's fine. You don't always need to have units that do everything forever and are durable and put out firepower and cheap and all this other stuff. Once in a while, more often than not actually, you're just going to have units that put out damage. And this is one of them. It's fast and it shoots stuff and I love it. These things are definitely tank hunters. I don't ever see them being played with the Disintegrator Cannon. Having 3 Dark Lances rerolling hits against the target, that's going to scare your opponent. Unless it's toughness 12 or higher, then yeah, you're going to get 3 hits, you're going to get 2 wounds, it's AP 3. You're going to get a hit through and you're going to do D6 plus 2 damage. It's an average of about 6. Reliably. Now I was going to leave Wracks off the list, but we'll talk about them very briefly because they're pretty tough, but past that I don't give a shit. They are toughness 4, they do have a 5-up feel no pain. If they destroy an enemy unit, you gain a pain token. When they're destroyed, you gain a pain token. You can take them in units of 5 if you really want to. That's probably how you run them. 60 points, they don't have any cool special rules like infiltrate or anything like that. They just have feel no pain. You get a pain token when they die, you get a pain token when they kill stuff. They're terrible in combat, they're terrible at shooting, they're just durable, kind of, and that's it. So, moving on from Wracks, we have one more unit, well, 2 more units. We have one more unit to talk about in the index, and then one from Forge World. Wyches are the last unit here. They are 90 points for all 10 of them. They have some pretty interesting combat when you add in that +1 AP and you attach a character to them, like Lelith, for +1 strength. They become strength 4, AP 2 when they charge, because of your army rule. 1 damage though. 3 attacks a piece, which is pretty nice. You get 30 attacks with this. You're going to be AP 3 if you have Lelith attached, because she gives you +1 AP. And then you have your +1 AP when you charge, so now you're AP 3. You're going to be +1 to wound, which is awesome, because you're also strength 4, so you're actually wounding Marines and anything that's toughness 4 on 3s, which is just dumb at AP 3. And you're going to cut through that whole unit, and it's going to be a fun day. What you do with the Wyches is you put them in you either hide them, which is totally viable strategy because they are very fast. They move 8 inches. They can't advance and charge, but they're fast enough at an 8-inch move. You pop a vehicle behind cover, turn 1, get out 3 inches, move 8 inches. That's 11 inches plus a charge. Or if you really need to, You know, you can move the vehicle up, but then you're not using the Wyches movement at that point. But yeah, for 90 points, I mean, they got a 4-up invuln in combat. That's super good, because once they're in combat, you just can't get rid of them. They're so annoying. You have to fall back from them, at least when they tie up something that you don't want to be in combat with them, and that's when their ability kicks in. Each time an enemy unit, not monsters or vehicles, within an engagement range of 1 or more units from your army with this ability is selected to fall back, models in the enemy unit must take a desperate escape test as if they were battle shocked. When doing so, if they are battle shocked, subtract 1 from the desperate escape test. And so for those of you that don't know what a desperate escape test is, if you try point a model, which you used to be able to do and prevent them from falling back at all, in this edition, you're allowed to desperate escape. If you desperate escape with that specific model that's pinned, each model that's moving, you know, out of that combat, that's passing over enemy models, they have to take a desperate escape test. You basically just roll dice for that model. On a 1 to 2, it's destroyed. It just dies. However, if you're battle shocked, doesn't matter if you're tri-pointed. If I just touch you and you're battle shocked and you try to fall back, you have to take a desperate escape test for each model in the unit. So Wyches, they say, oh, you want to fall back? Okay, 1 to 2, a guy dies, each one. And then if you do somehow battle shock them, they're -1 to the test. So 1s, 2s, and 3s kill enemy units. Oh, could you imagine if this worked on monsters and vehicles? So, not great against things like Tau, where everything are vehicles, or Tyranids, where everything's monsters, but just about every other army, or whatever these get into combat with that isn't a monster or vehicle, you can start actually killing some extra models in that unit, which is pretty funny. But yeah, getting the 4-up invuln, 90 points, super fast, basically AP3 with Lance when they charge. This unit's going to put out a lot of damage, and it's going to trade really well because it is so cheap for its points, and it is so damn durable in combat with that 4-up invulnerable save. So Wyches are a really good unit, and I always run at least 1 unit of them with Lelith, because you need to have some damage output in your army. So Wyches and Incubi for sure, they add that damage that you need. And now, put your hands together for the last unit that we're going to talk about. There's only 1 unit for Drukhari in Imperial armor. You probably can't get this thing anymore. I haven't actually checked, but it's the Tantalus. It's got 18 wounds, it's toughness 10, only has a 4-up save, but it's got a 5-up invuln, and it moves really fast at 16 inches, and it's OC 5. So it's kind of nice to just plop on an objective and just be like, I'm here. This thing can transport 16 models. Grotesques take up the space of 3, and it can't transport Scourges, basically, so guys that can fly. So what does the Tantalus have? Well, it's got pulse disintegrators. It's 12 shots, strength 10, AP 2, 2 damage with assault. So not amazing, not horrible. A lot of shots, kind of low strength. The AP's okay, but this thing is pretty cheap. I mean, it's 230 points, 18 wounds, toughness 10, 5-up invuln. It does have combat. It's got 6 attacks, a strength 8, AP 1, and 2 damage, so it actually is a target for a tank shock. But yeah, Fire Index 16, Kabalite Warriors, give the transport sticky objectives. You can shove, like, you could take a unit of Kabalite Warriors and then break a unit in half and put all the special weapons in this one as well, and basically have like 2 units of Kabalite Warriors shooting out of this thing with power from pain, giving it reroll all hits, plus its gun on there. Or, like I was saying earlier, you can empower a unit that's on the table with that enhancement, and then turn around, pick the Tantalus, give it power from pain, give it reroll hits. It's so cool. And this thing also has a cool ability, which is a scything charge. Each time it ends a charge move, roll a dice. On a 2 to 3, you suffer D3 mortal wounds. On a 4 to 5, you suffer 3, and on a 6, you suffer D3 plus 3. So it actually has an inbuilt tank shock, plus the tank shock that you can put on it. Hopefully the thing you're charging won't be, toughness 8 or higher, so you can get 10 dice with a tank shock that gives you 3 mortal wounds, and then on average here, you're looking at another 2 to 3. So this thing can do an average of 6 mortal wounds on a charge, which is actually pretty cool. It's less points than a Land Raider. It can deep strike. It has that Fire Index 16, so you can just load this up with shit and just shoot the crap out of things with it. And the fact that it has 18 wounds and is T10, it actually makes it pretty survivable. There's more survivable things in this game, obviously, but yeah, I really like the Tantalus. I don't think you would ever take more than 2 of them, or more than 1 of them. I don't think you'd ever take 2, just because I don't think you need to take 2. Their gun's just not good enough for 2, but I think 1 of them could definitely be used effectively with all these different strats that you have to be able to get back in the transport, get out of the transport after it moves, and be able to charge. All that kind of stuff is really, really good for the Tantalus, because it's basically like a Ravager and a Raider kind of put into one. Not exactly, I mean, its gun's completely different, but 12 shots with this thing. Hitting on 3s, rerolling everything. 8 hits, reroll the 4, that's another 3. You're looking at about 11 hits. At strength 10. And you could even load this thing up with a mix of units. You could have 10 Kabalite Warriors, giving it sticky objectives, and then you could have 5 Incubi inside that run out and kill stuff. Kind of give it a little combat threat. Charge this thing into something, does mortal wounds, tank shock, more mortal wounds. So I think the Tantalus definitely has a place. It's a transport, it's got firing deck, it's got all these things. It's fast as hell. It works really well with your army, with your detachment. You know, it's just a really, really strong unit, I think. For 230 points, I think it's right where it needs to be with its wounds, with its toughness, with its save. I think that's all fine. Unlike a Raider though, you're not gonna be able to hide this thing, so just make sure you get out there and try to do as much damage with it as you can before it ultimately dies. So let's circle back to some of their strats as we wrap this up and kind of go over the conclusion here. So, Vicious Bite. Do mortal wounds to stuff on a 5-up. Well, if I have a Tantalus with 16 guys inside, that's 5 mortal wounds. After it attacked, after it tank shocked, and after it tank shocked because of its tank shock ability that it has just right on its data sheet. So on average, that's 11 mortal wounds, dude. 3 from the tank shock, 3 from its other ability. Let's just call it 2. 2 from its other ability, that's 5. 5 from this, that's 10. That's 10 mortal wounds. That's 3 dead Terminators. That's a dead tank. Like, that's so many, just so much dead right there. So that's pretty fucking cool, but also really, really good on things like Raiders and such. You just get a few mortal wounds on something. It's nice to be able to do. I've talked about Wraith-like Retreat several times at this point. Being able to jump back in your transport after you've attacked, oh my god, dude. I cannot explain to you how insanely good that is. If I had this ability as a Salamanders player with my Firestorm Assault Force, and I could jump out of Land Raiders, kill things, jump back inside, do you understand how overpowered that would be? Because now I don't have to worry about my unit getting shot back at. I get back into my transport and I'm like, I hope you have big guns because you gotta kill this transport. And it's like, best case scenario, you try to take out, if you're playing with these kinds of rules, you need to take out what can kill your transports or just kill your tanks effectively as quickly as possible, and you just win. Because your opponent's never gonna be able to actually deal with the things in the transport at that point, because you just get out like a fucking missile, fly through terrain, kill a unit, and then just jump back inside your transport. Like, that's so good. It's so good. And I think it's especially good with the Tantalus because it just has so many guys inside. And this isn't just like a rubber band where you can get out, kill something, and get back in. This can be a slingshot where you get out, then move the transport up. Hell, you could advance the transport up 20 inches, fuck it. Advance the transport up. It doesn't shoot that turn. Who cares? I kill my unit in combat, I move within range of that transport, and then I get inside. And now I'm even further up. It's just so good. It's so good. Skyborn Annihilation, yeah, it's fine on Kabalite Warriors, getting sustained hits too. That's gonna pop off sometimes and just absolutely, completely kill something. But again, really only good on the Kabalite Warriors. They have to have disembarked from a transport in order for you to have used this. And the only thing that I can think of with guns that's useful are Kabalite Warriors. But getting sustained hits 2 on them is gonna be very effective. Imagine getting sustained hits 2 on this unit against some kind of big blob of infantry, because you've got all the Shredder, you've got all that other like anti-infantry stuff. You have like a Flamer, I think, and you have a Shredder, which is, it doesn't matter. You're gonna get sustained hits 2 on all of your guns. That's very strong when you're rerolling all your hits, because when you combine that with the Archon for reroll all your wounds, yeah, just about most infantry units are gonna feel that pain pretty damn hard. So, super good. We're just continuing a trend of super good stratagems combined with all these units. Pounce on the prey. Move your unit, move your transport 14 inches, get out, charge, and then Wraith-like Retreat. Just get right back inside of it. Like, the whole reason why transports are good this edition is because they help keep your units safe. They transport them up the table. You know, they have OC. You have to crack the transport open first, and then more OC comes out of it. It's like the Russian dolls of OC. It just continues to get bigger. But now, I've gotten out of my transport, I've killed the unit, and it's your turn. You now have the opportunity to get rid of that unit. Just kidding, fuck you. I'm getting back inside my transport. It's so good. It's so good. All right, then we got Swooping Mockery. Oh, What's that? You moved within range of my Tantalus. I guess I'm gonna move it 6 inches behind the wall. Can't see me anymore. Oh, what's that? You moved within 9 inches of my transport. I guess I'm gonna fly onto the objective and take it away from you. There's so much different things you can do with a reactive move. It's just so damn good. Oh, you moved within 9 inches? Okay, well, I guess I'll block off this lane so that you can't charge my other thing. There's so many good things you can do with this. It like makes my head spin. And then you got the Night Shields, the 4-up invuln. Put it on a Tantalus and just be like, fuck you. It's got a 4-up invuln now. What are you gonna do? It's got 18 wounds. It's toughness 10. Like, anything shooting at it is gonna be AP 2 or better. So, fuck it, 4-up invuln. What are you gonna do about it? All of these stratagems are good. And then we'll wrap it up here by going over the enhancements again. Phantasmal Smoke, give it to an Archon, gives them the benefit of cover and stealth. So Nightmare Shroud, that's one of the best ones there. Obviously not being able to get overwatched with your Incubi is extremely good. And it's just good on like kind of at whatever. Like you could have it on Wyches if you wanted to. Put it on a Succubus. God, I love that name. Put it on a Succubus. And then her unit of Wyches can't be overwatched as well. But it's definitely the best on Archon. And it's definitely the best when an Archon is using it attached to a unit of Incubi because they just hit so hard now. The Sadistic Fulcrum, you know, re-empower your unit. Okay, so you empower your unit, then you empower the Tantalus or whatever transport. I think this is best on a Tantalus because the Tantalus has a ton of guns. And hopefully there's still guys inside there shooting out. So like, that's pretty cool, right? You get out a 10-man unit of warriors that are gonna reroll hits, reroll wounds. Awesome, I already like it. And then they're gonna pick the Tantalus that has a 5-man unit inside of Kabalite Warriors because you also have a Venom. So you split a second unit in half, put all the heavy weapons in one, first turn jumped them inside of this Tantalus. And yeah, so the Tantalus is shooting out a blaster, a shredder, a thing, a majig, and all of its other guns that it has on it for free. And you're not having to worry about killing your enemy units to get those pain point token things. You just pick a unit and do it. Spiteful Raider, Succubus, get out, kill something. You could even put this on an Archon with Incubi. Empower that unit, they're +1 to hit, or sorry, they're re-rolling hits. I keep saying +1 to hit. They're re-rolling hits, they're re-rolling wounds, and so now you have an Archon running in there with Lance, +1 AP, re-roll wounds, re-roll hits. Seems good. And this army is so much fun to play. All the little transports everywhere, it's exactly what they needed, and it's just so much fun. Takes all your really easy to kill infantry and turns them into a tank because they can just keep getting inside, or they just start in, come out, kill something. Now you've got to go around the wall to see them. It lets them trade really well because like I just said, when you can get out of a transport, kill something, get back in the transport, I can't deal with that unit. I can't interact with that unit. I must destroy the transport before I can really do anything. And if you've got CP, which you're gonna have every turn because you generate one every turn, that unit in that transport with those Wracks, or not, those Wyches, I'll get it right one day. Those Wyches, those Incubi, you're not gonna be able to interact with them very well. And you could just, like, if you have multiple transports, if you pop the transport and you can't quite get to the guys inside, they're gonna hop into a different transport next turn, just do the same shit over again. It's outrageous, dude. And it's just so nice because you can get back inside this transport and that transport can fly away 20 inches or 16 or 14 if you don't want to advance a Raider. If it's a Tantalus, you're moving 16. If it's a Raider, you can advance an extra 6. So you can just move away and just be a huge pain in the ass. This is a very thematic detachment and everything about it is good. I wish that Dark Eldar had a couple more units that were more useful, but this is downright strong. So that's gonna do it for me, guys. If I missed anything, you guys know what to do. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me what I missed. Tell me how you play your Dark Eldar. Tell me if I'm completely wrong about everything, because this is one of the armies that I actually play. So let me know. Be sure to raid the like button, take its belongings, subscribe to Theory Hammer, smash Nurgle's bell icon, check out our other videos as well. I have a date with a Succubus, so until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.